On his second international trip with the Prime Minister this year, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe secured a $2.6 billion deal. Carney's mission to India, Australia and Japan last week saw a deal with the Indian government and Cameco, a Saskatoon-based global supplier of uranium. The company will now look to ship 22 million pounds worth of uranium to India over the 9-year term. Moe did not secure any deal on lentils, which India currently has a 10% tariff on. For more on this, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe joins me now. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Karina.
So, concerns of foreign interference by India was a major topic surrounding this trip, and you said that Canada needs to separate its trade talks from its national security concerns when dealing with certain countries. Is that really possible? And if so, why?
Yes, it is. And, for example, the approach, and I say this as a Canadian, that we take with a country like India when it comes to foreign interference, defense, those types of relationships is different than a country like China, for example. And I say all of those are different than a country, despite the current challenges we're having with the United States of America and the president today. The relationship with those other two countries is somewhat different than what we take with the United States of America. And so there are, really conversations that we need to have around trade that maybe tangentially, but not directly related with respect to some of the other very difficult conversations that we're having with countries around the world. If we truly want to expand our trade around the world, this is what's necessary. And I would say today it's even to some degree necessary with the United States of America, who has long been our closest ally.
But when you're in the room and you're having these talks, does it feel like you're having to ignore the elephant in the room, or does it not feel like that?
No, not until we talk to the media and they ask questions on it. When you're in the room, we talk about, trade, how we can, work together on a long-term uranium supply contract, how we can expand the capacity of the Pulse Protein Center of Excellence, for example. And those are, conversations that have been long-standing between Saskatchewan and India. And, we welcome the opportunity to have the federal government in those rooms and actually getting a few of them across the line.
Now, let's talk about the deal with Cameco to sell uranium to India. It's not going to actually expand ongoing mining operations, from what I understand. So what is the benefit to the province?
Well, it's good for the industry. Any long-term supply agreement with countries around the world, as we see in the years after the commitment that was made to triple the number of nuclear reactors on Earth, we see many of those countries and those power companies looking to Canada, and all Canadian uranium comes from Saskatchewan, to be their sustainable, trustworthy supplier for years into the future. And that's precisely what we've seen with India. We've sold them uranium before. From 2015 to 2020, we had a nuclear cooperation agreement. This one's larger, and quite a bit larger by volume, and it's a 9-year agreement as opposed to 5. And so that's a positive. And I would expect it to be expanded on sooner rather than later with the volumes that are there. And I would expect to see other agreements like this in other countries around the world. And so we have currently 3 additional uranium mines that are finding their way through the approval process. 2 of them have all of the approvals, federal and provincial, and we'll be beginning construction shortly. So all of that uranium is going to be available for the world to access.
Let's turn to the question of tariffs, because India currently has a 10% tariff on Canadian lentils, and the country has also placed a 30% tariff on Canadian yellow peas. That was in November. What progress, if any, did you make on lifting those pressures?
Yeah, we asked a number of ministers to remove them, and there's some, pretty intricate domestic pricing challenges that the India government spoke to, and so we're going to continue to work with them on 1, not increasing those tariffs, 2, removing them at the first opportunity. And then 3, I would say, a pretty significant commitment made by both Prime Ministers Carney and Modi was to bring our CEPA, or a Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, to conclusion this calendar year. That's a free trade agreement with 1.4 billion people in India, we'd hope that the ag commodities would be part of that agreement. But that's a real positive, I would say, not just for Saskatchewan, but for the entirety of our nation to have access to over a billion people in a developing world. There's great opportunities in that agreement that I think are going to create some opportunities here at home.
Now, you mentioned sort of the intricate pricing when it comes to their crops. Considering the underlying reasons for India being quite happy to keep those tariffs on our products, and that they have themselves a bumper crop this year, is this even worth the effort? I mean, what compromises or what can we put on the table to try and convince them that this is not helpful for the relationship?
Always worth the effort. We've cycled through some of this. It's not our first time experiencing these tariffs being applied and removed from India. We cycle through it with China as well from year to year. We've worked through these challenges before. I would hope that we would come to some type of a tariff reduction. I would be hopeful by this summer at some point in time. However, that has yet to be seen. And certainly, if we're able to come to the conclusion of those CEPA negotiations, that free trade deal, we would hope that ag commodities, including pulses, would be part of that agreement and have maybe a little more structured relationship with respect to the 2 million tons of pulses that is imported by India, and much of that is provided by Canada and Saskatchewan.
Now, we're talking on a day when oil prices are surging to the highest level in a number of years because of this ongoing conflict in the Gulf that's pretty much all anyone's talking about.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what your thoughts are on how Canada should go forward.
Well, I would say it's so very unfortunate that we weren't able to build, that second pipeline to the West Coast a number of years ago, because then that product would be made available to Asian countries, and we would be, somewhat integrated in their energy security supply chain. We see now talks of the South Bow or some more capacity going south to the U.S., which has traditionally been our market in this province. But we desperately need to make more oil available on the West Coast of this nation. And that was good not only for us and the careers and jobs in Western Canada that it can provide, but I would say good for Asian countries where they would have access to a trusted trading partner, that being Canada, in procuring some of that product. And I would just close with this. We'd be doing right by the environment. We have an oil field that will feed into that line that has reduced their methane emissions by some 65% since 2015. I don't know of another industry globally that has an environmental record like that. And so new technology is coming into the oil production area space all of the time. And yes, they're producing more oil, but they're also producing it much more sustainably. And we have a duty, I think, as Canadians, to provide that product to the world. And we need to do so by getting it to the West Coast.
Thank you very much, Scott Moe, for your time today.
Thank you.